Welcome back to another episode of Midnight Sports Talk, the podcast of Midnight Sports Today. I'm Brock, and I'm joined with my friend. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Tyler. I've known Brock for a little while now. Huge sports enthusiast, mainly in football. I played football in high school, was getting recruited to play D1 ball. But unfortunately things didn't end up working out. So now I just work in football. Um, so how are you doing today, Brock?
I'm doing good, but unfortunately, we got to start off the show with some pretty sad news. The legend John Madden has unfortunately passed away today at the age of 85. He is a Hall of Fame coach and commentator, Super Bowl champion with the Raiders, and obviously his namesake is on the famous video game. Just want to take this time to recognize him, his life, and his achievements. He won the Raiders' first ever Super Bowl, defeating the Minnesota Vikings. He with Pat Summerall was the voice of football for a very long time, and obviously the game, has sold millions upon millions of copies throughout the years. I got introduced to football first through the video game. I never forget it was Madden '07. Sean Alexander was on the cover, and always hearing his voice was a special treat growing up. So definitely just wanted to say a few words towards him and rest in peace, John Madden.
Yeah, I mean, my condolences go to the Madden family, of course. I think the football game or the video game Madden, just the entire franchise is a staple amongst football fans all across the country and in the world. That's how I got introduced to football too, actually, and that's how I learned how the game was played was through the video game. And I mean, we can't forget, the different innovations that John Madden has brought to the game of football as well. Being able to do drawings on instant replay during football games, is amazing commentary, and he was an outstanding coach as well. He was a legend in the game of football. So there's only one John Madden, and rest in peace, John Madden.
Absolutely. The legends that he coached could as endless. Guys like Art Shell, Gene Upshaw, Ken Stabler, Fred Biletnikoff, Ted Hendricks, Willie Brown. The list can go on and on. He truly was an innovator in the game, and he will be sorely missed. Moving on, big news in the playoff push. The Dolphins are now in prime playoff contention. If they win out, they will be in. Very surprising, being that they started the season at 1-7. A breakdown for the playoffs for you is in the AFC, only the Chiefs have clinched a playoff spot, winning the AFC West via their win over the Steelers on Sunday, combined with a loss for the Chargers against the Texans. In the NFC, the Packers, Cowboys, Rams, Buccaneers, and Cardinals have secured a playoff spot, with the Buccaneers, Packers, and Cowboys all clinching their division. In the NFC, the teams that are currently in the hunt are the 49ers at the 6th seed, the Eagles at the 7th seed, with both having records of 8-7, and teams looking to oust them from their spots are the 7-8 Vikings, 7-8 Falcons, 7-8 Saints, and the 6-9 Washington football team. From the AFC, a lot of spots left to be clinched. The Titans lead their division. Cincinnati Bengals lead their division. Buffalo leads their division with their win over the Patriots on Sunday. The Colts are fighting to keep a playoff spot. Some news from the Colts. Carson Wentz is currently out of their football game on Sunday against the Raiders. He has not confirmed to have caught COVID, but could have possibly have caught it or been in close contact. As we all know, he's unvaccinated, so the rules are a little different for him. However, he could be cleared by game time and still play. The Colts have reportedly reached out to Philip Rivers to make a comeback. There's no info on that yet, but as of right now, it will be Sam Ehlinger, the quarterback from Texas, to be taking the snaps for Indy. The Patriots remain in the playoff hunt at 6, and the Dolphins at 7. Now, this is a very important thing because the Patriots play the Dolphins to end the season in Miami. That could be a game to determine who gets a playoff spot. On the bubble are the 8-7 Chargers, the 8-7 Raiders, 8-7 Baltimore Ravens, 7-1 Pittsburgh Steelers, 7-8 Browns, and the 7-8 Broncos. The Chargers play both the Broncos and the Raiders to end their season. The Raiders just defeated the Broncos last week, and the Browns sorry, not the Browns, but the Steelers will have to play the Ravens to end the season. So a lot of interesting matchups coming up. So that is the news for today. We are going to be talking about the NFL draft coming up. And Tyler, do you have any thoughts so far pertaining to the teams that could, jump up through either trades or losing the rest of the season in the draft?
As of right now, not really, because I mean, like you said, in the AFC playoff picture, everything is pretty unclear right now. So I mean, it's until after we reach week 18 is when we'll get a clearer picture of what will happen throughout this this upcoming draft. And I think there's a lot of interesting things working around college football that might play a factor into this year's draft. So I mean, this is kind of a unique situation this year. So just waiting to see how this all plays out in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. So just to recap the top 10 picks after the season ended today, number 1 would be Jacksonville again. Number 2 would be Detroit. 3, Houston. 4, the Jets. 5, the Giants. 6, Carolina. 7, the Jets again via Seattle. That was through the trade for Jamal Adams. The Giants have the 8th overall pick via trade from Chicago. As you all know, last year the Bears traded up to select Justin Fields. Number 9 is the Washington football team, and number 10 is Atlanta. So, like you said, a lot of movement could happen, especially with teams like Washington and Atlanta. They're still in the playoff hunt. Atlanta, especially, they're a tricky team to judge. It really depends week by week, and quite frankly, how well Cordero Patterson plays. But currently, that is the top 10. So, moving on from that, we're going to jump to our top 10 overall leaderboard, where we rank the prospects from 1 through 10 for who we feel is the best around. Tyler, do you want to start?
Yes. So let me just pull up my list right here. So starting off my list at number 1, I have Kyle Hamilton, safety out of Notre Dame. Kyle Hamilton to me is one of the most special prospects in this draft class. Starting off with his measurables, the dude is 6'4", 215, incredibly athletic for his size, and just overall, like he's a great football player, has high football IQ. He's a physical safety. He's good in coverage, and I think that's where he excels the most. Actually, is playing in coverage, and he just sees the field well. He's a strider. He has a great length. He has good ball skills. There's not too many prospects that we can call elite, but I think Kyle Hamilton is kind of creeping up on that elite status as a prospect right now. But that's why I have him at my number 1. And I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh no, continue.
And so we're just going. You just want me to say my whole list right now?
Yes, sir. Keep it going.
All right. Number 2, we got Aidan Hutchinson, edge rusher out of Michigan. Aidan Hutchinson wasn't a name that was really recognized before the start of this season. He's been extremely productive, recorded 14 sacks this year, has just been outstanding this year. He's disruptive, he's productive. Disruption on the defensive line, that's the best type of production, to be, it's not about racking up numbers on the stat sheet. That's just, it's just, you can't record certain things that defensive linemen do. So Aidan Hutchinson, I think he has a extremely good get off. He's explosive on the line. One knock that I have on him though is pure athleticism. I question how fast he is, but other than that, he's very strong. Uses his hands very well. He's a smart football player. Displays good football IQ. He's very good against the run and the pass, and it has a high motor. He's playing through the whistle on every play. Coming in at number 3 is Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback from LSU. Before the season, you could have made a case that he was probably the best prospect available in this upcoming draft. However, his production and his play hasn't lived up to that hype. but he still has the physical tools and the talent to be considered in the top five yet. And, he has good size. He has great length for a cornerback. He's very athletic, fluid hips, and a high football IQ guy. And he's a willing tackler as well, which is very important to play, at a high level in the NFL. And coming in at number 4 is Evan Neal, offensive tackle from Alabama. He's one of the first players that I've actually watched in this class, where I've actually sat down and thoroughly evaluated these prospects. Evan Neal really impressed me with his size. He's a true 6'7", 340-pound offensive tackle. Shows position flexibility, can play both on the left and the right side. And that's where his home is on the outside. He shows great foot quickness. He's a great bender. He's natural in the way he bends. Good play strength. He's good in the run block and the pass block game. Love his kick step and his punch. Just the only thing is he needs to get more consistent with the timing of his punch and his use of hands. Number 5 is Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher from Oregon. Now, a lot of people had Kayvon Thibodeau as, the consensus number 1 overall player coming out of this draft. And, it's very easy to see why. The dude is a physical freak, and an athletic freak as well. He has an insane build for someone that plays as athletic as Thibodeau does. He's very good off the edge. He's a speed rusher. He has a very quick first step, but also plays with a lot of power up front. The only thing is he's a raw prospect. He shows a lot of good physical tools that can't be coached. However, he does need to be coached up a little bit. The use of his hands, and also he hasn't shown much production throughout the season, nor has he been disruptive in some games. One game that comes to recent mind is the Pac-12 championship against Utah, where, he showed little to no production, wasn't as disruptive, and was almost non-existent on some series. Number 6 is DeMarvin Leal, defensive end from Texas A&M. Now, some might be thinking that he has just got into the news for a off-the-field issue with a DUI arrest. However, I do not think that will affect his draft stock much, if at all. DeMarvin Leal is a physical specimen. He stands at 6'4", 291. Has great length. That's one thing that popped out to me when I first started watching his film was his length. But he's a great get off. I think he fits more as a 4-3 defensive end, 3-4. You can even argue that he could play at like the 3 and the 1 tech too. He has a fast get off, great use of hands, and he's very strong as well. Blows back offensive tackles coming off the edge. He's a good bull rusher and can even use some finesse moves to get around the edge as well. Number 7.
Sorry, real quick before you move on, since I won't be talking about him. I disagree with what you said about his DUI arrest not affecting his draft stock. I think if this was a couple of years ago, that would be a different story. However, if you look at this season, these past couple seasons, we've seen multiple first-round selections being cut by their teams due to personal off-the-field issues. Guys like obviously Henry Ruggs is the first one that comes to mind. Damon Arnett, Buda Baker, I apologize. DeAndre Baker, and Jeff Gladney, just to name a few. So I think that's a thing to look out for to see how much his stock might fall. Even looking back at the previous draft, you talk about a guy like Micah Parsons, who had all the skill, all the raw talent and skills coming out of Penn State. Now, there was some rumors circling around about some behavior issues and possibly some criminal activity, alongside the fact he did skip the 2020 season due to sitting out for the pandemic. I believe that both things contributed to his stock falling, and that I just want to say that I do believe that will play. I still think he's a first rounder, don't get me wrong. I do think that will affect his draft stock, just because a lot of teams don't want to deal with that kind of issue anymore. However, he does come from a long lineage of great pass rushers out of A&M, Von Miller, Myles Garrett, just name a few. So he does have the raw talent, but he won't be in my top 10. And my top 10 is for that reason alone, is just because of his criminal history. Not history, but his criminal incident.
Well, that's where I would disagree with you on that as well. I mean, just look at the names that you mentioned. They were all picked in the first round and also were accused and arrested, for more severe crimes. Now, the Henry Ruggs situation is probably, out of all the names that you mentioned, probably the most similar to what DeMarvin Leal got himself into as well. He got arrested DeMarvin Leal was arrested under DUI, under intoxication of marijuana. Henry Ruggs was arrested because he was not only under the influence, but was recklessly driving which resulted in the death of a young woman. Now, you could be argued that because that is the most recent situation, that it might apply to DeMarvin Leal a little bit more and could cause his draft stock to fall. However, I don't think that's the case here. I think he will still get picked in the top 15. You cannot deny his talent. And to build off of that argument as well, Micah Parsons, who hadn't played a snap in 2020, was also accused of a lot of misconduct within the locker room and off the field. However, was picked just outside the top 10, and is in the running for not only defensive rookie of the year, but defensive player of the year as well.
Yes, no, that is true. Here's the way I think a lot of GMs are seeing it. A&M season is over. They unfortunately had to drop out of the bowl game due to COVID issues. And right now, I'm not sure if DeMarvin had previously opted out of the bowl game, so I cannot comment on that. But what I do know is that right now, for any athlete that's looking to make it to the NFL, it's all about draft prep. And part of that prep is practicing not just your physical attributes, but also your communication skills, your character skills, things like that. And knowing that he still decided to get behind of the wheel with not only marijuana in his system, but also in his car as well. To me, that just shows a lack of decision making. Personally, for me, it doesn't make a difference. When you have a guy that puts up 12 and a half sacks, not sacks, but tackles for loss at 8.5 sacks in the SEC, that's definitely something you got to keep an eye out for. I just think, again, GMs are just not willing to take that risk due to the recent issues that have sprung up with first round picks.
That is a fair point. Just my only extra argument to that would be Josh Jacobs, who was also arrested on a DUI, I believe, a year ago. Is still on the Raiders roster. It's kind of a situation that I wouldn't say was swept under the rug, but isn't talked about as much anymore because of his production and his play.
I agree with that to an extent. I do believe also his DUI was voided due to the fact that there was either a procedural error or they couldn't get him tested in time. He did wreck his car in a tunnel, so something that, and it wasn't mechanical, so obviously, you got to put two and two together. But I think that's part of the reason is because legally nothing happened, so it was more just no one got hurt, move on. That's just kind of how it was for him. But no, it's going to be interesting to see, definitely come draft time. If he has a stellar combine or pro day, he definitely going to jump back into my top 10, as long as he's able to stay on the straight and narrow from here on out.
All right. I appreciate that point. All right. So back to the top 10 list. After DeMarvin Leal, I did have Ikem Ekwanu, offensive lineman out of NC State. You can see a lot of draft analysts debating between whether or not to have Ikem listed as an offensive tackle or offensive guard. I truly think that he would fit more as an interior lineman than an outside, playing on the outside. It's just due to his length and his foot quickness that he lacks on the outside, playing on the outside. I do think Ikem Ekwonu is a very good, very good in both aspects of the game, run and pass game. Even though he doesn't possess the foot quickness to play on the outside, I do believe he is quick enough to play on the inside. Has a lot of power in his punch. He's a very smart offensive lineman, and he has very good play strength as well, which hence is even a better reason to move him inside to play guard. Number 8, we have Tyler Linderbaum, center out of Iowa. Tyler Linderbaum is a guy that has been a name that has been recognized throughout personnel departments, before the season has even begun. Always regarded as one of the top prospects coming out of this class. It's just because he has a high football IQ. He's a very smart center, very good feet to play center as well. He's a very experienced player. And on top of that too, is good play strength. It's just there. He's a great prospect. There's nothing really I can mark him down for. I mean, the only thing that I would say is that he doesn't possess one trait that truly stands out, but he plays well at everything and well enough at everything to be considered in the top 10. So number 9, we have our first quarterback, Matt Corral, quarterback from Ole Miss. Now there's a lot of debate about, the quarterbacks in this upcoming draft class. And, a lot will argue that this is a weaker class than, recent classes, which is a fair argument. Because there is not, I will agree with the notion that there is no, consensus number 1 quarterback in this draft. But is there really, a consensus number 1 every year? But anywho, Matt Corral was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school, from Long Beach Poly in California. Was originally committed to, I believe, Florida, and was also considered by USC as well. But nonetheless, was always known for his arm strength, even coming out of high school. He's a gunslinger. Will put the ball anywhere he wishes to put it. He has the arm strength to fit in tight windows. He's a quick processor, and he's accurate as well. He's a good passer, and possesses enough athleticism as well to play the quarterback position in today's game. There's a couple knocks on him. However, I think his game is a little too erratic. You can see him, while he does go through his progressions quickly, his decision-making hasn't been the best. Sometimes he will trust his arm strength a little too much. Will try to fit into windows that aren't there, or will try to force passes, just because he is that confident in his arm. And also another knock that I don't think too many people have seen, but another knock that I have on him is the usage of touch. I don't think he's the best at using his touch. I've seen some plays where he's thrown the ball, deep routes, and has let the ball hang a little too much. Some plays that would have gotten away in college ball, just the ball is hanging up in the air too long and would probably get batted away or intercepted by NFL corners or safeties. And at number 10, I was a little conflicted here, but considering that this is my first top 10 board, I'm going to stick with George Karlaftis, edge rusher from Purdue, at number 10. He's a very raw product in my opinion, but possesses a lot of good physical tools. Has a great get off. He's fast. He's more of a speed rusher than anything, but possesses a lot of power. Pass rushes with a plan too. Great usage of hands. It's just the only thing about him is he's a little out of control. Sometimes just can't control his body. You see him getting around the edge, but doesn't possess the balance to kind of pick himself up and finish the play. And also he's not very good in run support either. He doesn't sniff out or diagnose run plays very well. You can see he's late to the ball sometimes. But other than that, he's a tough football player, has good competitive toughness, runs through every whistle. So no doubt you're getting a tough football player in Karlaftis, but definitely does need some coaching. But I do believe that he has a high ceiling as in the NFL.
All right, thank you. So before I start mine, I want to talk on Ikem Onwonu. I apologize if I'm butchering his name. Um, so you mentioned that you believe he's going to be a better interior lineman in the NFL, right? So
Yes.
do you think because they have to move him from tackle to guard, that will lower his draft stock?
Not really. Because you know, knowing that offensive line in general is a very important aspect of playing offense in football. Of course, tackles seem to be more at a premium in the NFL. However, you can't deny Ikem Ekwonu's size, his strength, and his football IQ. So I do believe that some teams could even see it as he possesses position flexibility as well. While he may not, be as talented playing on the outside on the offensive line, some teams could see him as a backup option where, he could be your starting left or right guard. However, if something were to happen to your to one of your starting tackles and you don't have a backup that you have, a whole lot of faith in, he's a guy that you could probably bump out to the outside and play for a game or two here and there.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So for my top 10, I also have Kyle Hamilton at number one for a lot of the reasons which you said. He has great explosiveness, great anticipation, great eye for the ball. He has a good frame. He's a commanding force in the defense, and he was coached by Marcus Freeman. Yes, for only 1 year, but obviously Freeman has been doing a lot of good things at Notre Dame as DC now head coach. I think he's going to continue, and when you have that kind of structure, even if it's just for 1 year, I think that's going to elevate your game overall. So Hamilton at number one. I like Aidan Hutchinson at number two. He's shown up time and time again for Michigan this season as throughout his career as well. He has a great swim move. He's fantastic with his hands. He can knock offensive tackles' hands away quite easily. And he's just following the tradition of the Big Ten defensive defensive ends, Big Ten edge rushers, guys like the Bosa brothers, Chase Young and such. They're very quick off the line. They're able to get around tackles on the outside fairly easily, and they just wreak havoc in the backfield, both on the run and the pass game. Like I mentioned previously, I really like the fact that he can win one-on-one matchups via both power and speed. And he's clutch. When the time for the fourth quarter to come around, he's gonna be there. His body can handle, and he has the will, the determination to get there, as shown in the big game this season. So that's why he is my number two overall pick. For number three, I went a little different. This is somebody that you didn't name in your top 10. I went with Ohio State's Chris Olave. Olave has had a phenomenal career at Ohio State. I remember watching him for the first time against Clemson in the 2019 college football playoff game. I believe it was the Fiesta Bowl, the one where Justin Fields threw the unfortunate game-ending interception. Olave is just a phenomenal receiver. He has great footwork. He has great hands. He reminds me a lot of Keenan Allen in that way, and also Devonta Smith in the way they're able to, one, run routes, get separation, and catch the football to finish the play. He's going to be a fantastic addition to wherever he goes. He's going to amplify that offense, being the guy that they can go to on first, second, third down whenever they need a catch. And he's had the body of work at Ohio State to back up all the claims that I'm saying. At fourth, I have Kayvon Thibodeau. He is my biggest worry when it comes to the top 10 right now in terms of busts. Like you said, there was a lot of games in which he didn't show up. Some of the things that troubles me is he's not going to be able to power through anybody in the NFL. I don't think he has that kind of skill set in his toolbox. I don't think he's going to be that kind of day one starter, havoc record, havoc maker, person like that. I think he's going to be a project. And when you're drafting a player at that high in the top 5, you want them to be a day one starter. However, his upside is too large to ignore, being that he does have such phenomenal physical abilities. So he's not going to drop below the top 5. I just worry on the fact of, will he be able to play at an NFL level with the things that we've seen so far? Evan Neal, I have at number 5. Like you're saying, he's a phenomenal tackle. He's been a great weapon and tool for Bryce Young. He can play both on the left and the right. And if you look at some of the guys in the top 4 or 5, the Jets, the Giants, they've already drafted their left tackles for the future, and Andrew Thomas for the Giants and also Mekhi Becton for the Jets. However, on the right side, it's pretty miserable with Solder for the Giants, and also I believe it's Moses for the Jets. So he could be a really good addition for them. And also protecting young quarterbacks is important. Everyone talks about the blind side, but a lot of times the edge rusher lines up against your right tackle because not technically, but a lot of times that will be the weakest position on a team's O-line. So picking him up would be a great piece to any offense. At number 6, I have Derek Stingley Jr. Great athleticism, had a phenomenal freshman year when they won the national championship. To me, he's kind of had a little bit of a decline since in terms of production. But he comes from LSU, DBU, right? There's a lot of guys he learned under. There's a lot of skills that he has and a lot of experience he has. And quite frankly, if you look at the tape, he is that dude. He reminds me a lot of like an A.J. Terrell kind of player, right? A guy that's not going to really have a lot of success in their first year, but when they get comfortable in their second, when they're surrounded by guys that can make plays, the game just elevates. To me, he's one of those guys. That's what he did in his freshman year around guys like Grant Delpit and such. And thus, I think he's going to be a fantastic addition to any team. At 7, I have Matt Corral. I agree he does have some issues with the deep ball. He does let some balls hang. And he's had a bunch of issues with throwing balls behind receivers. However, his ability to run the multiple offenses, and especially if you're more modern offense, more RPO-based, play action, things like that, a lot of things based on reads, he excels in, obviously being coached under Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin has a wonderful history with quarterbacks. You look at guys like Palmer and the success Leinart had in college. And then you look at guys most recently like Tua and Jalen Hurts and players like that. His fingerprints are all over players like that. I like his athleticism a lot. Obviously, all the top quarterbacks in the NFL now that are below the age of 30 are runners. Will have the ability to run. Look at a guy like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. Guys like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. Obviously, their running is a very important element of the game. But then you look at guys like Mahomes and Herbert, those big-eyed quarterbacks. They're very mobile, right? They're very elusive. They're able to roll the pocket, extend plays. Guys like Wilson was doing that when he was younger. Even to an extent now, they're able to get those key first, like 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 7s. You know, they're not bricks in the pocket. They're able to roll out, extend plays, and sometimes due to the defensive scheming, the lane is there to go get the first down. So that's why I have him at number 7. Number 8, Tyler Linderbaum. Everything you just said, he's fantastic. Comes from a fantastic organization and school, which is Iowa. Obviously, Kirk Ferentz been up there for 20-something years. A lot of great linemen have come out. Most recently retired Marshall Yondas came from there. Guys like Brian Bulaga, Austin Blythe, James Daniels. You got tight ends like George Kittle and Noah Fan and TJ Hutchinson come from there. Brandon Sharif came from there. Riley Reef came from there. And most recently, Tristan Wirfs, who's been a phenomenal addition to the Buccaneers. To me, he's one of the top 3 right tackles in the NFL. And if we look at the center position, obviously they're the shot caller of the line. They're the quarterback, essentially, of the offensive line. What that does for a quarterback is phenomenal. If you look at the Chargers, I use them as my example. The addition of Corey Linsley how that's just so much more pressure taken off of the quarterback to not have to call out the protections, to have guys that can communicate blocking assignments to the rest of the guys, and to just have a leader on the O-line. Linderbaum is, I don't think he's going to be a day one starter at center. He probably move to guard first, let him learn the position and learn how the pace of the NFL a little bit. But then if your center does go down, not only is he a fantastic backup, he's a day one starter at guard. He's fantastic in the run blocking. He has great lateral movement. Love his footwork. He can get to the second level and blast people off their base. And for that, that's why I have him at 8. At number 9, I have George Kraffis. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name. He has a lot of great physical attributes. What's called his play sometimes can be a little sporadic. Quite frankly, if it wasn't for the DUI arrest, I would have Neal there. But he plays in the Big Ten, and as we all know, if you to be a starting lineman in the Big Ten, you gotta have a little bit of grit, a little bit of griminess about you. Put your hand in the dirt, run through people. I see that a lot with him, and to me, he's gonna be a fantastic destroyer of tackles when it comes to the NFL. Number 10, I have Garrett Wilson. A lot of the same reasons. I like Chris Olave. Wilson can get behind defenses, get behind coverages, schemes, great footwork, excellent balance, and another great addition to any team, and he can elevate an offense quite quickly. So that is my top 10.
All right.
You have any comments on that?
I mean, just the one small comment on Chris Olave. I was conflicted on. He was the player that I was conflicted on switching out George Karlaftis with at 10. Just because of like, what you said. Olave is a special talent at the wide receiver position. Also possesses good size for the position as well. He stands at 6'1", 187. Moves extremely well. Very good short area quickness. He's an excellent route runner as well. Great hands. Just has a knack for getting the ball as well. And to play in today's game, it seems like offenses are going a little more pass heavy. So to have that receiver that can contribute and to produce at a high level is, at an all-time high. A player like Chris Olave can match that type of production in the league. One of the questions that I had about him is, can he do enough to warrant that wide receiver 1 status? Coming into the season, I think this season he's kind of proved that he, has that type of ability and that type of potential.
Yeah, I see a lot of a guy like Cooper Kupp and Chris Olave, a guy sure-handed, a guy that can get behind coverages, a guy that can run routes very well, especially crossing routes, horizontal routes, things like that, really stretch the field. He's the type of player that can do that. The other reason why I really like Olave is because when the lights shine brightest, which is the college football playoffs, he's shown up every single time, even against Michigan. Even though they lost, to me, Olave was always there. He was the main reason why I felt that Ohio State still had a chance late in that ball game, because he would pluck balls out of the sky. He's very good at catching balls at their highest point. He's not afraid to put his body on the line for a ball. And when you have not only the physical traits, but just the will and determination, to me, you can't stop that, especially at the receiver position. So that's why I really like Olave. Karaftis, I need to watch more film on him. I'm going to be honest with you. Because I had a lot of debate putting him in my top 10. Like Ekwanu, I wanted to put him in there. K. Pickett, I want to put him in there. Cross from Mississippi State, which I will be watching the film on him after. I believe they're playing Texas Tech right now in their bowl game. So I got to take a look at that. Kraffis is another bust alert for me. Though I have him in my top 10, I'm not fairly confident about him. I just have him ranked higher than Garrett Wilson because of the positions that they both play. Receivers a little bit more easier to replace than what's called defensive end. So we'll just have to see. There's also, I really like Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker a lot. Unfortunately, it's a running back, so it's really hard for me to put them in the top 10 unless they're winning the Heisman pretty much. So we'll just have to see on that. But for everybody else, I'm fairly confident in my top 10 list. Yeah, is there any question marks that you have in your top 10 list as of right now for the first list?
Just like, I agree with the George Kalafdis assessment as well. I do think there's a lot of bust potential in him. Like I said before, he is a raw prospect, but has the physical tools such as physicality, strength, speed, get off. It's just his effectiveness in the run game and where he would play, like where he would fit is my biggest question as well. Playing at the five, like I don't see him as like a five tech. I see him playing more as like, 3-4 outside linebacker, defensive end type of deal, or edge rusher. I'm sorry, more of like a pure edge rusher than anything. But other than that, I see his game as a little more limited. Not I feel like coming in the future months, he could be someone that falls out of my top 10 very quickly. And also Matt Corral as well. Just because right now I have a boomer bust grade on him. I think he's a guy that truly can either be really good in the league or, can fall pretty hard. And that's just because of his erratic play. I think it truly depends on where he ends up, what situation he is in. Right now, my pro comparison for Matt Corral would be Jameis Winston.
Yeah, that's not settling at all. I'll be real honest with you. Jameis Winston is the epitome of boomer bust. And with that, I want to jump on to our next segment. We're going to talk about our top 5 quarterbacks entering the draft. So I have Matt Corral at my number 1. I'll name the rest of my list after. But the true not determiner, the thing that's going to make me either most comfortable with Corral or completely want to go against him is going to be his performance in the Sugar Bowl. He's going against a very impressive Baylor Bears defense, coached by Dave Aranda, who obviously was the architect behind LSU's national championship and award-winning defense in 2019. If he can play well against them, considering the guys that they have, I would definitely elevate him. However, if he plays poorly, it also depends. I believe he's playing in the Senior Bowl as well. Depends how he plays in the Senior Bowl and plays in the Sugar Bowl. Will either elevate his draft stock for me or really bring it down. But based on all the tape that I've seen, even if you look at his worst game against Alabama, to me, the reason why he played so poorly wasn't the fact that he couldn't get it done. It was the fact that, one, they got stopped on 4th down at their opening drive, and so that killed all momentum. And also the fact that Kiffin went for it like 3 times on 4th down in the first quarter, and they weren't able to get it. He was just playing from behind the whole game. And as we see in the NFL, when a quarterback has to play from behind, there's not going to be good. I think when you give him the proper tools to surround himself with, and then you give him also the right timing to make decisions, when you give him an ability to slow everything down, to really take up a lot of time off the play clock, he's going to be one of the top quarterbacks in this league. I guess he's kind of like Tua Tagovailoa in a way, where he's going to be really good on short to medium routes, but when he goes deep, there's going to be some balls going to be overthrown, underthrown, into coverages, and that you just got to take the good with the bad with him. But when he is on, to me, there's nobody better. For number 2 for my quarterback is Kenny Pickett. He has the complete opposite of Corral. Big frame, big arm. He reminds a lot of Justin Herbert in the way he's built. He reminds me a lot of Patrick Mahomes in his arm. And he reminds me a lot of what's his nuts? Oh, I can't think about it. But his decision making is pretty god awful sometimes. If you look at his Miami game, sometimes I don't even know what he thinks. Sometimes I question what he's doing. Sometimes I think he questions what he's doing himself, because he made some decisions that were so terrible and so detrimental to the team that it gives me a bit of pause. He still is a fresh round talent for me regardless, because of what he was able to do at Pitt. And to me, the Steelers would be foolish not to pick him. I wrote an article about that if you all want to check that out on the blog. But his physical attributes, his big arm, his ability to run, his ability to extend plays, and his height is just too phenomenal not to take him in the first, because he can work on decision making. He can scheme things out that he does really wrong. But the physical talents he gets right there. At number 3, I have Malik Willis out of Liberty. Didn't have as good of a year as he did last year. Sometimes he looks like he's Kyler Murray. Sometimes he looks like he's Derek King. That's just a simple way to put it. However, he is very mobile, has a big arm, and he can make some very impressive throws. To me, the determination of whether he has success or not in the NFL is if he goes to a team that's set up for a quarterback like him, that has receivers that can burn safeties, that has receivers that can get open and make tough catches, and that has an offensive line that can give himself time in the pocket, one, not only to make those throws, but two, to get outside of said pocket and make some magic happen with his feet. At number 4, I have Desmond Ritter. That he may drop out depending on how he plays against Alabama coming up in the playoff. But for the most part of his career, he's been very accurate. He's been solid. He just has some moments where it's, again, like Pickett, where you're asking, what are you doing? But for the most part, he's kept it under control. He's taking a Cincinnati team to the college football playoff, the first ever Group of 5 school to make the playoff. He played fairly impressive, in my opinion, against Georgia last year in the Peach Bowl for 3.5 quarters until it got to the 4th. He wasn't able to get it done to get the first downs that he needed to ice the game. So there's still some question marks about him. However, if he plays well against Alabama, and if he beats Alabama, to me, he automatically ascends possibly above Pickett and Corral. It's just all good depending on what happens in the next couple of days. And number 5, I have Sam Howell. A lot of people had him as a number 1 or number 2 overall quarterback coming into the season. Had a really rough start against Virginia Tech and really hasn't recovered. However, if you look again at his physical attributes, he can get out of the pocket, he can run, he's very tough. His throwing motion is sometimes suspect. His accuracy is suspect. But you also got to consider the fact that last year he had a plethora of weapons on offense. Guys like Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, De'Ami Brown, just to name a few. And they all left. So it was just him. He had to kind of restart with a brand new offensive unit. And as the season went on, he slowly progressed. The issue for me is that he had some really poor showings, 1 against Notre Dame and 2 against Pitt, especially at the end of the game against Pitt where he threw the interception. I understand he's just trying to make a play, but you can't allow that to happen. That's why he's at number 5 for me. And that rounds off the 5th quarterback on my top 5.
All right. So my top 5 looks a little different, but it is similar in the sense that our number 1 and number 2 are the same. So number 1, of course, is Matt Corral, quarterback from Ole Miss. But number 2, I have Kenny Pickett out of Pitt. One thing I really like about Pickett is that is his competitive toughness. You can see it on the field. He's willing to run for extra yards. Not afraid to take shots downfield. But I do think he gets a little ahead of himself sometimes and gets a little erratic in his decision making. I think he possesses good accuracy, throws the ball with good accuracy. Doesn't have the strongest arm in the class. I think he has good arm strength, but it's nothing to rave about. He has decent size to play as well. He's 6'2", 220, and very good athleticism for the position as well. My number 3 quarterback in this class is Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty. Before the season, he hasn't gotten, I would say at the conclusion of the 2020 season, he didn't really get hype up until after I'd say the 2021 draft class was concluded. He was mentioned in a lot of early mock drafts for the 2022 class, and a lot of people could have said, who is this guy? Well, Malik Willis wasn't really known because he plays at a group of 5 school at Liberty. Um, and one thing that stands out to me about Malik Willis is his arm strength. Can fit the ball into pretty much any window, can make all the throws. Just like the ball just jumps out of his hand. There's no doubt that he can drive the ball down the field. But one question I do have is his accuracy. His accuracy and ball placement is a little inconsistent. However, he does show the tools to be able to make off-platform throws. I question his off-schedule ability a little bit. When the plays kind of get out of structure, how does he process that and move on from there? A lot of what I've seen him run at Liberty are a lot of one read plays, a lot of RPO. But he's athletic, very strong arm. He's a live arm. It's just like it's the decision making that needs to be, coached up a little bit. My comparison to him was Trey Lance. A lot of his game reminds me of Trey Lance when he was coming out of North Dakota State last year. However, the unfortunate part about Trey Lance is we haven't seen how that experiment has gone so far in San Francisco, as he's barely received any snaps during the regular season. My number 4 is Desmond Ritter. Desmond Ritter is a quarterback that I feel conflicted on at a lot of times, because there are some times where he flashes second round talent, and there's other times where I question if I'd take him in with a day 3 pick. He's a very competitive player. That's something you can't coach. However, I do think he has solid arm strength, not the strongest arm. Ball placement is also another question that I have about him as well. He can't, you watch his deep throw, especially on deep passes, a little inconsistent there. Seems to be floating the ball a lot too. Will just overthrow his receivers. But I do think he's very good in the short game. Throws under 7 yards, always on the dot. He's a very good timing thrower. He throws with good rhythm. When players get out of structure, he shows a solid ability to kind of move around and make plays happen. And he's a good athlete as well. Number 5 would be Carson Strong. The only reason I didn't put Sam Howell at number 5 is because I'm just questioning whether or not he will enter the 2022 draft. And obviously Sam Howell hasn't played up to expectations this year as well. Carson Strong is also another prospect that plays at a smaller group of 5 school at Nevada. He was surrounded with good players and good talent around on that Nevada offense as well. Ran in Matt Mummy's air raid offense. My biggest thing about Carson Strong is his mobility. He's not a good athlete. Not like the typical quarterback of today's game where he possesses a little bit of mobility to, at least be able to maneuver around the pocket and to escape, make plays off schedule. However, he has good arm strength, can make all the throws. There was one play that I believe it was against Cal this year, threw an out route towards the sideline from the opposite hash mark. Was a very impressive throw. I think that throw alone just shows the type of arm strength that Carson Strong possesses. Has good accuracy, short and medium routes. The deep ball game, he's a little inconsistent, needs to work on putting the ball on the money, needs to throw his receivers in stride. Other than that, he's a little bit of a slower processor, but I think that can be coached up. And he's a competitive player as well. Won every year that he started at Reno. So excited to see where this quarterback class goes.
No, definitely excited to see. You're very high on Carson Strong, while I'm very low on him. To me, like you said, he doesn't have a lot of mobility. Sometimes he puts some balls in some air situations. Quite frankly, I've seen him play against Hawaii 3 times in his first 2 meetings defensively. And Hawaii's not even a good defensive football team, but they got to him. He's not great under pressure. At Nevada, of course, his stats and his arms looks good, obviously, in their air raid offense. When he gets to the NFL, I don't want to be one of those old, croons or geezers who wants to say, oh, he's not going to be able to make it in the NFL because he can't, adapt to the game. But he can, in my opinion. There's a lot of people that have a lot of first round and second round grades on him. I don't. The only good attributes is his height and his arm strength. And if I was looking for that, I'd probably go and get Drew Lock. I'm just not a big fan of Carson Strong. I did think it was kind of funny. It's Strong related, but not necessarily a critique against him. But he's opted out of Nevada's bowl game. So I'm all for players opting out of bowl games when they're pretty much guaranteed first round picks. They're going to get first round money. But it's always interesting to me when you see guys opt out where you think like you're not that good to opt out. I didn't realize that why Strong opted out. Because it reminds me a lot of when Will Grier opted out of West Virginia's bowl game against Syracuse, and then he fell in the draft, and then realistically never amounted to anything in the NFL. No disrespect to Will Grier, it's the way it is. Maybe it rubbed me the wrong way that a guy that to me on your list he's fifth, on my list he's not even in the top 5, would opt out of said bowl game. When you got guys like Howell who are playing, Pickett who's a guaranteed number 1, I can understand. I don't know. It's kind of a weird feeling because to me that's like your final opportunity to show out, especially when it's kind of like adding film to your tape. And maybe he wants to avoid what happened to Kyle Trask, but to me, Trask didn't really fall that far to where he would have been selected anyway. He was never going to be a first-round pick, no matter what people said. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Strong. To me, he doesn't have any of the tools that are going to make him successful in the professional game. Maybe I'm wrong, and if he is, I'll apologize. But I just don't see it based on what his body of work has been in the Mountain West. Also, the fact that in his 3 years there, he never made a Mountain West championship game, which speaks a lot for a guy that you're thinking, he's gonna be that dude. I mean, I can't speak on Jordan Love because I don't have that off the top of my head, but the other Mountain West quarterbacks that have ever made some kind of impact or opportunity in the NFL of recent was Kellen Moore, who obviously dominated the WAC in the Mountain West when he was there, and Colin Kaepernick. He won the WAC before he left for San Francisco. And the fact that he could even make the championship game with a pretty decent roster is it speaks volumes to the type of a winner I think he's going to be in the NFL.
Well, don't forget about Josh Allen, who played at Wyoming in the Mountain West as well. To my memory, did not reach the Mountain West championship either. On top of that, to your argument about him opting out of the bowl game, you also have to consider the factors where his head coach, Jay Norvell, had left the program and opted not to stay and coach in the bowl game as well. Also, the amount of transfers that left Nevada as a result of Jay Norvell's departure. Lost 2 of his starting receivers, a lot of questions surrounding the staff, lost a couple guys on the defense, which to that point as well, Nevada has never really had a great defense while Carson Strong has been at Nevada as well. He's always played near the top of the Mountain West, but then again, I wouldn't say wins are strictly a quarterback stat, especially when you consider the strength of his defense while he's been there. Also, to that point too, I don't think a lot of personnel departments will really even consider the fact that he hasn't played in a bowl game or not. Those are unless if you're playing in a New Year's Six bowl or playing in the college football championships, bowl games are nonetheless just an exhibition game. We have 3 or 4 years worth of tape on Carson Strong as well. There's a lot of games you can go back and see, and really the 12 games that he's played in previously this season will speak to the type of player that Carson Strong is. The only reason I had Carson Strong at 5'2" in mind is just because it is a bit of a weaker class. I do think that him and Howell are around the same caliber. I think Howell's ability as a passer is really hindering him, from moving up in the rankings. I do think he needs to stay another year to develop. I do think Carson Strong is a pro-ready quarterback based on his passing ability. Mobility-wise, that is something that will hurt him in the future. My draft comparison to him was Brock Osweiler as a floor player. As a ceiling, we're yet to see. I think his ceiling is limited by his mobility again. But the things that he can work on is becoming an elite passer, which he already possesses the tools, as he has good arm strength and good short to medium accuracy. Just the only thing is his deep ball accuracy needs a lot of work.
Yeah. So just kind of comment that you're right. Where Josh Allen didn't win a conference championship, he did, however, make it to a Mountain West championship game where he lost by 3 points to San Diego State. Just want to give you a little update on that. It's hard for me to say Carson Strong is a pro-ready quarterback. I mean, I just don't see it. Maybe it's just internalized hatred for Reno, because of the fact that I'm a UH fan and I'm a graduate of UNLV. But even if I try to step back and throw all my feelings out, when I look at the tape, I just don't see him being an NFL quarterback. I think he's going to be easily sackable if he doesn't have a top 5 O-line. I think he's going to he makes really poor decisions sometimes under pressure. And those are two things you just can't win with. But like I said, only time will tell. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to be moving on. We have a question from somebody that's been a big supporter of Midnight Sports Today. His Twitter handle is at John Fyman, John JOHN, Fyman FYMAN. Thanks, John, for sending us this question in. I appreciate you always communicating with us on Twitter. And his question is, and quote, his question is, how long, or maybe if the first and second round persist, if the first and second round persist before. I apologize. I'm just screwing up these words. His question is, how long in the first or second round persist before a first running back is taken? Or basically, how long will the draft go on before a running back is taken? So you have any thoughts on that, Tyler?
Personally to me, just the way how running backs are valued in the league in today's game, typically, there is that rule, that unspoken rule that, you shouldn't take a running back in the first round. However, I do think that Breece Hall out of Iowa State possesses enough talent to be taken in the late first round or even the early second round. It's just got to see how, the first top 20 picks play out. However, I do think some running back needy teams that will be in the back end of the first round will probably take a chance on Breece Hall.
Yeah, so when you look back at these past 2 drafts, the first running back taken off the board last year was Najee Harris out of Alabama. He went to Pittsburgh, and he was the 24th overall pick. If you look at the previous year, it was the 32nd overall pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That was the first running back taken off the board. So I believe that a running back will be taken off the board in the first round. To me, there's 2 first-round running backs available right now. That's Breece Hall and that's Kenneth Murray from Michigan State. They both possess a lot of great qualities. They're both tough runners, very fast, very explosive, and I think they can make a real big impact in the league. I think Hall is the better running back, but I think Walker is the better prospect. There's 3 teams that stick out to me that need a running back in the first. And realistically, unless they're a guy like Saquon Barkley, a running back, if taken the first, is going to probably be taken by a playoff team, especially since the old adage is the team that can run the ball in the playoffs wins, right? And a lot of times in the playoffs, that's when you see that you can't run the ball and you want to address that issue as soon as possible. The 3 teams I have is Kansas City, the Chargers, and Buffalo. The Chargers need another running back to supplement Austin Eckler's production. Austin Eckler is not just a true running back, but also is a receiving running back as well. So I think they want to bring in somebody that can be a pure runner. However, Justin Jackson has really stepped up these past couple of weeks, alongside the fact that they've been burnt on the last two times they selected a running back in the first round. First time was Ryan Matthews, who had a pretty phenomenal career as a Charger when he was on the field. The issue was that he was never on the field. He was always injured, and that really led to the demise of his career. Melvin Gordon was the second number 1 pick in recent memory for the Chargers. He had a all right career. Didn't start out great. Started to come on in the back half of his rookie deal. Obviously, he had the holdout, which really hampered a lot of things that left the bad taste in a lot of Chargers fans' mouth. I think Kenneth Walker would be a nice fit for the Chargers, because I think Hall will be off the board by the time the Chargers pick, but we'll just have to see. And if we always remember, the last time the Chargers picked a running back in the top 5, it was LaDainian Tomlinson. So, there is a precedent for them picking successful running backs in the first 4. Same thing with Kansas City. There's a precedent of them taking running backs first overall. Definitely Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the most recent memory, but Helaire hasn't really been the running back that they needed. He's fantastic in the pass game. He's good at getting extra yards, but when you need a conversion on like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 2, he's not really that guy, unfortunately. I think they're going to want a strong up-the-middle runner, and that's a guy like Breece Hall. So I can see them definitely going after somebody again in the first. And then the last one is Buffalo. Quite frankly, Zach Moss and Devin Singletary aren't cutting it. There's a lot of things to like about this Buffalo team. They're very reminiscent of the 4 Super Bowl team in the 90s with Jim Kelly. However, the thing they're missing is a running back. They have their Jim Kelly and Josh Allen, and they have their, I believe, Andre Reed and Stephon Diggs. They got guys like Beasley and Sanders, but Moss and Singletary have been cutting it. They need their Thurman Thomas, and I believe they're going to go and take it in the first round. I expected them to take a running back in the first round last year. I don't think they did, because both Harris and Etienne was off the board. That's why they went with Greg Rousseau. But I think if there's one of those guys on the board, they're going to go after them in the first round. So to answer your question, John, sorry for butchering it at the beginning, but I believe it's going to be between pick 23 and 32 in the first, where the first running back gets taken off the board. All right. Well, we're approaching the end of our show. Just want to say thank you to everybody that has listened so far. We really appreciate it. It's our second episode. First time Tyler's been on the show, and he'll be definitely coming back soon. But we want to start a segment where we basically talk about, we pick one guy who we believe is very, very underrated, hasn't been looked at enough in the draft, and we kind of give argument for him. I'll go first, and my guy is Calvin Turner Jr. out of the University of Hawaii. If you've been following me on Twitter, I'm really big on this guy. I'm a big UH fan, so I watched him a lot, both last year and this year. I said it before, he's electricity personified. He's the only person in FBS history to have 1,000 passing yards, 1,000 rushing yards, and 1,000 receiving yards. I believe his career started out at Jacksonville State. I remember hearing the story that the program shut down the football program, thus came to Hawaii, and then he switched over to being a wide receiver. Now, he's not just a wide receiver. He's more of like a utility player, kind of like how Tavon Austin was used at West Virginia. Cordero Patterson is used right now in the NFL. You can line him up at all kinds of different positions. You can run him out of the backfield, single back formation, shotgun formation. He plays in the slot, plays outside. He's a punt returner, kick returner. You put him all over the field. The ball's in his hands. He makes things happen. Chrissy Harvin-esque, very quick, very elusive. In the one-on-one, you cannot tackle him. If you want to look on any film on him, I suggest looking up the 2020 New Mexico Bowl, which took place in Frisco, Texas, because of the pandemic. He absolutely lit up Houston. He had both a rushing touchdown, either receiving touchdown or a rushing touchdown, and also a kick return touchdown. He's UH's best offensive weapon by far. To me, he can run the wildcat. Like I said, you can put him all over the field. In the punt return game and even the kick return game, he's had some question marks as far as fielding the ball. But I won't take that kind of chance on a guy like that who can make a tackle, not make a tackle, but can break a tackle, can make a big play. And if any team that gets him is going to get somebody that immediately elevates their offense. And again, there's just so many things that you can do with him. To me, there's no reason why he won't make an impact in the NFL. So Calvin Turner Jr., look out for him. I believe he's playing in the Senior Bowl. So it's going to be a great opportunity for him and a great opportunity for us to truly see what kind of skills that he has.
All right. My underrated player for this year's draft, my first one that I'd like to mention is Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. Zach Charbonnet was a highly recruited prospect coming out of high school in the 2019 class, originally from Oaks Christian High School in California. Was a 4-star prospect, had offers from Big Ten SEC schools, originally committed to Michigan. As a true freshman, he started 7 games and appeared in all 13 games for Michigan, rushed for a little bit over 700 yards. Unfortunately, in the 2020 season, lost some of his touches, rushed a little over 100 yards, appeared only in 5 of the 5 games, started 3. Entered the transfer portal and ended up committing to UCLA, where he immediately made an impact for the Bruins. Rushed for over 1,100 yards. 5.5 rush or yards per rush average. Just displays extremely good short area quickness, very good burst. Has good vision. He's a downhill runner. Powerful when he runs. He turns his feet, fights for yards. Overall, he's a tough football player. Just love his toughness. Just love his competitiveness. Love that he fights for yards. Has good speed. My only question is his change of direction. When you see him running in between the tackles, he's good. However, he does limit himself getting to the numbers and outside the numbers as a runner. Instead chooses to run forward. But that is also in his nature as a downhill runner. His running style does remind me a lot of actually Wayne Gallman when he was coming out of Clemson. Wayne Gallman was also the same. He's more of a downhill runner, similar measurables. Wayne Gallman was 6 foot. Charbonnet is 6'2", 215. Gallman weighed in at 210. Another thing too about the 2 of them is they lacked a little bit in the receiving game as well. Charbonnet is not the greatest route runner, nor does he have the best hands, nor did he even produce a whole lot at UCLA out of the backfield as a pass catcher. Had a little over 130 yards as a receiver. But overall, I think he'd be a great day 2 to day 3 pickup. Good change of pace back with the potential to become a starter eventually one day. But that just depends on whatever situation he lands in the NFL.
Yep, he's an excellent pick. Saw him run over Hawaii actually in the opener. That's when my eyes are open to him. He has a good foundation running against both Pac-12 and Big Ten defenses. So he'll definitely be somebody to keep an eye out. Thank you so much, Tyler, for joining us. Definitely, like I said, he'll be coming back. I appreciate everybody for listening and tuning in. This has been our 2nd episode. So if you want to support us, as always, you can check out our GoFundMe via midnightsportstoday.org, or also there's going to be a little icon on our Twitter where you can fund us either there or on Venmo. as previously mentioned, we are offering out a prize. If you donate just a minimum of $1, your name will be entered into a raffle. At the end of the month, we'll pick your name out of a hat. And if your name is picked, not only will you get a personalized article of your choosing, you also have the opportunity to come on the show, share your thoughts, and get a chance to talk to us. So definitely would appreciate it if you helped out the show. We're an independent blog, and we'll continue to be one. And that's about it. I appreciate you coming on the show, Tyler. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me on, Brock. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to being back on your podcast soon.
No, it's definitely. You've been a friend of mine for a long time, and I think all we do is talk football when we're together. So it's definitely fun to kind of share what we talk about with everybody else. Like I said, once again, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you guys again. Take care.